The hangar doors stood wide open under the scorching Texas sun, and inside, polished Apache helicopters gleamed like monuments to war. Captain Marcus Dalton stood at the edge of the ceremony, dirt under his fingernails, beard tangled with 4 years of street life, eyes fixed on the machines he once commanded. A sergeant approached Admiral Cortland with impossible words. "Sir, this homeless man says he can fly the old Apache, says his call sign was Ghost." The colonel sneered, ready to throw Marcus out. But the Admiral's face went pale, because Ghost wasn't just any pilot. Ghost was a legend they all thought was dead. If you're watching this story from anywhere in the world, we'd love to know where you're joining us from. Drop a comment below telling us your city or country, and if stories like this one about courage, sacrifice and second chances speak to you, please consider subscribing to our channel. Your support helps us share more incredible true stories that honor the forgotten heroes among us. Now let's continue. 4 years earlier, Captain Marcus Dalton had been a name whispered with reverence in every Army aviation unit from Fort Rucker to Bagram. He'd flown 287 combat missions in an Apache AH-64, most of them the kind that made other pilots refuse the briefing. Night extractions in Fallujah, gun runs over Helmand Province. Close air support so danger close that his rotor wash kicked dust into the faces of the Marines he was saving. His call sign, Ghost, came from his ability to appear in hostile airspace without warning, deliver devastating fire, and vanish before enemy forces could even track him on radar. He wasn't the loudest pilot in the ready room. He didn't brag. But when the mission was suicide, when the weather was impossible, when every other crew was grounded, Marcus Dalton raised his hand and said, "I'll go." His co-pilot, Lieutenant Danny Chen, used to joke that Marcus could fly an Apache through a keyhole in a sandstorm. Danny carried an old brass compass everywhere, a gift from his grandfather who'd fought in Korea. He'd rub it before every mission and say, "This thing's got 90 years of good luck in it, Ghost. We're untouchable." And for a long time it felt true. Then came February 9th, 2014, a coordinated Taliban ambush in the Korangal Valley. Marcus and Danny were flying cover for a convoy when the radio exploded with screams. 3 Humvees pinned down, RPGs coming from every direction, casualties mounting. Marcus didn't wait for orders. He dropped altitude, pushed the Apache into a dive that made the airframe shudder, and opened fire. He could see the enemy fighters scattering, could see the Marines dragging wounded men behind cover. For 6 minutes, he and Danny held that valley alone, buying time for the quick reaction force. That's when the SA-7 missile locked on. Danny saw it first. His voice came through the headset, calm as ever. "Missile lock, Ghost. Deploying flares. We're good. We're good." But the missile didn't chase the flares. It punched through the tail rotor assembly like the hand of God. The Apache spun, and Marcus fought the controls with every ounce of strength in his body. Fought the physics and the screaming alarms and the ground rushing up. He managed to level out just enough. The impact shattered his left shoulder, cracked 3 ribs, and split his face open from temple to jaw. When he woke up in the wreckage, strapped upside down, blood filling his mouth, he turned his head and saw Danny. His co-pilot's eyes were open, staring at nothing, the brass compass still clutched in his hand. Marcus survived. Danny didn't. Neither did the 2 crew chiefs who'd been in the support Black Hawk that tried to extract them and got shot down 30 seconds later. 4 men dead. Marcus pulled out with a medal and a speech about valor, but every night when he closed his eyes, he was back in that cockpit, listening to Danny's last words. "We're good, we're good." The Veterans Affairs Office gave him appointments that led to more appointments. The PTSD diagnosis came with pills that made him feel like a ghost in his own skin. His wife, Ellen, tried. God, she tried. But Marcus couldn't tell her what it was like to wash Danny's blood out of his flight suit, couldn't explain why he woke up swinging at shadows, couldn't find the words for the guilt that lived in his chest like a tumor. She left after 18 months. Took their savings to cover the divorce. Marcus didn't fight it. The medical bills piled up. The pension got delayed, then contested, then lost in bureaucracy. Marcus called the VA every week, got transferred to voicemail, left messages no one returned. He sold the house to pay for treatment the VA wouldn't cover. He moved into a motel, then a weekly rental, then his truck. And finally, when the truck got repossessed, he walked to the I-35 bridge outside Killeen, Texas, sat down in the dirt beneath it, and realized he had nowhere left to fall. For 4 years, that bridge was home. Marcus kept 3 things in a faded green rucksack: a photo of his flight crew, all of them dead now, their faces creased from being folded and unfolded 1,000 times; a flight manual for the Apache, pages stained and torn, but he read it every night by flashlight like scripture; and Danny's compass wrapped in a plastic bag, the brass still shining. He never sold it, not when he was starving, not when winter came and he had no coat. That compass was the last piece of the man he used to be. He survived by being invisible. He never panicked, never caused trouble, never begged aggressively. He'd find day labor when he could, loading trucks or cleaning parking lots, enough for food and nothing more. At night he'd watch the stars and think about flying, about the way the world looked from 3,000 feet, about the clarity of the cockpit where everything made sense. The other homeless men under the bridge left him alone. There was something about Marcus, something in his posture, in the way his eyes tracked movement, that made people instinctively step back. One night a young guy named Kevin, fresh out of the army and already on the street, got jumped by 3 men trying to steal his backpack. Marcus didn't shout. He didn't run. He just stood up, walked over, and put himself between Kevin and the attackers. He didn't say a word. He didn't have to. The 3 men looked at him, looked at the way he stood, and walked away. Kevin asked him later, "Man, who are you?" Marcus just shook his head. Nobody. But somebody remembered. Sergeant Tom Rivera had been a 22-year-old Marine in Sadr City, Iraq in 2007. His convoy had been ambushed, pinned down in a kill zone with no cover and no air support. They were minutes from being overrun when an Apache appeared out of nowhere. Flying so low Rivera could see the pilot's helmet through the cockpit glass. That Apache stayed on station for 14 minutes, taking ground fire the entire time, suppressing 6 different enemy positions until the quick reaction force arrived. 23 Marines made it out alive that day. Rivera was one of them. He never forgot the call sign he'd heard over the radio. "Ghost 11, guns hot, covering your exfil." Now Sergeant Rivera was stationed at Fort Cavazos, working logistics, living a quiet life. He didn't think about Sadr City every day anymore, but he thought about it enough. And when Fort Cavazos announced a ceremony to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Apache AH-64, Rivera volunteered to help set up. It was a big event. Brass from all over the country, retired generals, a journalist from Army Times, and Admiral James Cortland, 70 years old, a living legend who'd been instrumental in developing the Apache program back in the 80s. The centerpiece of the ceremony was a fully restored 1984 Apache, the first production model pulled from a museum and made airworthy again. A pilot had been chosen to fly a demonstration at the end of the ceremony, a symbolic 12-minute flight over the base. Marcus hadn't planned to go anywhere near the ceremony, but on that Saturday morning, he woke up under the bridge and felt something pulling at him. Maybe it was the sound of helicopters doing test flights. Maybe it was the date, February 9th, 10 years exactly since Danny died. Maybe it was just that he couldn't stay away. He walked the 4 miles to Fort Cavazos in the heat, stood outside the fence line, and watched through the chain link as the Apaches sat gleaming in the hangar. He didn't try to go inside. He just wanted to see them, just wanted to remember what it felt like to be someone who mattered. Sergeant Rivera was carrying a box of programs toward the hangar when he saw the homeless man standing at the fence, dirty jacket, long beard, hands gripping the chain link like a prisoner. Rivera almost walked past, but something made him stop. Something about the way the man was staring at the helicopters, not with curiosity, with familiarity. Rivera walked over, cautious. "You okay, sir?" Marcus didn't turn. "I used to fly those." His voice was rough, unused. Rivera smiled, polite, the way you smile at someone who's not all there. "Yeah, that's cool, man. They're amazing machines." Marcus nodded. AH-64D longbow, turboshaft engines, 30mm M230 chain gun, Hellfire missiles. I flew 287 combat missions. Rivera's smile faded. What was your call sign? Marcus turned then, and Rivera saw his eyes, grey, clear, focused. Ghost. The word hit Rivera like a punch. His hands went numb. The box of programs fell to the ground. Say that again. Marcus's voice was quieter now. Ghost 1-1, 1st Cavalry Division, Iraq and Afghanistan, 2003 to 2014. Rivera's breath caught in his throat. His mind was racing back to Sadr City, to the ambush, to the Apache that saved his life, to the radio chatter Ghost 1-1. He looked at Marcus, really looked at him, and saw past the beard, past the dirt, past the years. Jesus Christ, you're real. Marcus didn't respond. Rivera grabbed his arm, pulled up the sleeve before Marcus could stop him, and saw the tattoo. Coordinates: 33 degrees, 20 minutes north, 44 degrees, 25, east, Baghdad. Oh my God, you're him. You're actually him. What Marcus didn't know was that inside the hangar, 30 minutes before the ceremony was set to begin, the designated pilot, a lieutenant colonel named Barnes, had collapsed. Heart attack. Not fatal, but he was on his way to the hospital, and the demonstration flight was now impossible. Colonel Bradley Henderson, the officer in charge, was furious. We have the Admiral here. We have press. We have 200 guests, and now we have no pilot. Admiral Cortland, standing nearby in his dress uniform, medals covering his chest, shook his head. The aircraft is from '84. It's not fly-by-wire. It's old-school hydraulics and manual controls. Most of your current pilots have only trained on the D models. Who here has logged hours on the original Apache? Silence. Henderson clenched his jaw. Sir, we may have to cancel the flight demonstration. That's when Sergeant Rivera burst into the hangar, breathless, dragging a homeless man by the arm. Every head turned. Henderson's face flushed red. Sergeant, what the hell is this? Rivera snapped to attention, but didn't let go of Marcus. Sir, this man is Captain Marcus Dalton. Callsign Ghost. He says he can fly the Apache. The hangar went silent. A few of the older officers looked at each other. One captain, a young woman named Sarah Mitchell, gasped audibly. Henderson looked at Marcus, took in the filthy jacket, the matted hair, the smell, and his lip curled. Sergeant, get this man out of here before I have you both arrested. But Admiral Cortland stepped forward. His eyes were locked on Marcus. Ghost? His voice was barely a whisper. Marcus met his gaze and nodded once. The Admiral's face transformed. Captain Dalton, I thought you were dead. Henderson wasn't convinced. He stepped between them, arms crossed. Sir, with all due respect, we can't just let anyone claim to be a combat pilot without proper verification. This man looks like he hasn't showered in months. You expect me to believe he flew an Apache? Marcus didn't respond. He didn't defend himself. He just stood there, shoulders straight despite the exhaustion, eyes forward. Captain Sarah Mitchell stepped closer, her voice shaking. Colonel, Ghost isn't just any pilot. He's in the textbooks. He's the Sadr City extraction. He's the Korangal Valley stand. I studied his tactics at flight school. Henderson scoffed. If he was such a great pilot, why is he living under a bridge? Real heroes don't end up like this. This is some stolen valor case looking for attention. Admiral Cortland's voice cut through the hangar like a blade. Colonel Henderson, that's enough. But Henderson couldn't stop himself. We have protocols for a reason, Admiral. We can't risk our equipment and reputation on a vagrant. This is a waste of time. The Admiral turned to Marcus, his expression softer now. Captain Dalton, I need to ask you something. Can you fly the 1984 Apache? Not the D model, the original. Analog systems. No digital assists. Marcus's throat was dry. He hadn't spoken this much in years. Yes, sir. Henderson laughed bitterly. Oh, he says yes. Well, that's all the evidence I need. Let's just hand him the keys. The Admiral ignored him. Captain Dalton, tell me the emergency startup procedure for the original Apache. Every step. The hangar went silent again. Every pilot there knew this was a test. The 84 model had a different startup sequence than the modern versions. It was archaic, complicated, something only someone who'd studied the aircraft decades ago would know. Marcus closed his eyes. For a moment, he was back in flight school, 25 years old. Danny Chen sitting next to him, both of them exhausted from a 16-hour day. He opened his eyes and started speaking. Battery switch on, check fuel quantity, APU switch to start, wait for RPM to stabilize at 60%. Monitor exhaust gas temp, don't exceed 700 degrees. Once APU is online, engine 1 master switch to on. Throttle to idle at 20%. Watch the N1 turbine, it'll spool slowly, should hit 58% before ignition. Ignition button, hold for 3 seconds. You'll hear the igniter click, feel the airframe shudder when combustion starts. Monitor inter-turbine temp, keep it below 850 degrees or you'll melt the blades. Wait for N1 to reach 100%, then bring engine 2 online, same procedure. Once both engines are stable, APU off. Hydraulic pressure should read 2900 psi across all 3 systems. Check rotor brake release, then advance throttles to flight idle. Rotor engagement is manual on the 84. You pull the lever under the collective, it's stiff. Takes 2 hands if the hydraulics are cold. Rotor RPM climbs to 101%. You'll feel the cyclic get responsive around 90%. Pre-flight checks. Flight controls full deflection, pedals full travel, check for binding. Weapons systems safe. Radios online. You don't take off until rotor RPM is stable and you've got full hydraulic authority. He opened his eyes. That's the procedure, sir. The hangar was frozen. Captain Mitchell had tears streaming down her face. Henderson's mouth was open, no sound coming out. Admiral Cortlandt smiled, a deep, genuine smile that creased his weathered face. "What's your call sign, Captain?" Marcus's voice was barely audible. "Ghost, sir." The Admiral straightened into a rigid position of attention and saluted. "Captain Marcus Dalton, I thought we'd lost you." The reaction was instantaneous. Captain Mitchell's knees buckled and she grabbed the landing gear of the nearest Apache to keep from falling. Her voice cracked. "Oh my God, you're real. You're actually real. I wrote my thesis on you." Sergeant Rivera was already on his knees, tears pouring down his face, his voice raw. "You saved my life in Sadr City. You flew through hell for us. I was there. I was there." Other soldiers began to recognize the name, the story, the legend. A staff sergeant in the back whispered to the man next to him, "Ghost is the Korangal pilot, the one who stayed on station after taking the missile hit." The whisper spread like wildfire. Heads turned, eyes widened. 2 junior officers snapped to attention. A master sergeant started clapping, slow and deliberate, and then others joined, and within seconds the entire hangar was applauding, some soldiers saluting, some just staring in disbelief. Colonel Henderson stood in the middle of it all, his face cycling from red to white to grey. He'd just publicly humiliated a living legend. He'd called him a vagrant, questioned his service, dismissed him as stolen valor. In front of the Admiral, in front of 200 witnesses. He tried to speak, tried to salvage something, but no words came. The Admiral turned to him, his voice cold as winter. "Colonel, you will step outside, now." Henderson left without another word, his career crumbling with every step. The Admiral turned back to Marcus. "Captain Dalton, we need a pilot. Our demonstration pilot is in the hospital. That Apache needs to fly in 20 minutes. Will you do it?" Marcus looked at the helicopter, the old 84 model, the machine he'd trained on a lifetime ago. His hands were shaking. "Sir, I haven't flown in 10 years. I'm not rated anymore. I'm not even sure I remember how." The Admiral put a hand on his shoulder. "Son, you just recited a startup procedure. Most of these active pilots couldn't remember if their lives depended on it. And you did it from memory. You are still a pilot. You'll always be a pilot. Will you fly?" But here's the thing about Marcus Dalton. Here's the thing about a man who'd spent 4 years under a bridge, who'd lost everything, who'd been forgotten by the system he'd bled for. He'd convinced himself he was nobody. He'd convinced himself that Ghost was dead, that the man who'd flown those missions was gone, and now, standing in this hangar, surrounded by people saluting him, calling his name, looking at him like he mattered, he felt something he hadn't felt in a decade. Terror, not of the flight, of hope, because hope could be taken away, and he didn't know if he could survive losing it again. He looked down at his hands, filthy, scarred, shaking. He thought about Danny's compass in his rucksack under the bridge. He thought about the 4 men who died because of his mission. He thought about Ellen leaving. He thought about every VA appointment that led nowhere. And then he thought about Sergeant Rivera, on his knees, crying, saying, "You saved my life." He thought about the young captain who'd written a thesis about him. He thought about the fact that maybe, just maybe, he could still be someone who mattered. His voice was hoarse when he finally spoke. "I'll need a flight suit." The Admiral smiled. "We'll get you one." 20 minutes later, Marcus Dalton stood in front of the restored 1984 Apache, wearing a borrowed flight suit that was too big in the shoulders and too tight in the waist. His beard was still long. His hair was still tangled, but his hands were steady now. Captain Mitchell approached him, holding a helmet. "Sir, this is for you, and sir, if I may, it's an honor." He took the helmet, felt the weight of it, the familiarity. The entire ceremony had paused. 200 people stood in silence, watching. The Admiral stepped up to a microphone. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have a change in today's flight demonstration. The pilot you're about to see is Captain Marcus Dalton, callsign Ghost, one of the finest Apache pilots this country has ever produced. He flew 287 combat missions, saved countless lives, and earned the Distinguished Flying Cross. Today he returns to the sky." The applause was deafening. Marcus climbed into the cockpit. The seat felt like coming home. He put on the helmet, adjusted the straps, and looked at the instruments. Everything was analog, mechanical, old school. He loved it. His hands moved on instinct. Battery on, APU start. The turbine whined to life behind him. He ran through the checklist, each step exactly as he'd described, each movement precise. Engine 1 online. The Apache shuddered as combustion ignited. Engine 2. The rotors began to turn, slow at first, then faster. The familiar whoomp, whoomp, whoomp that he'd heard in his dreams for 10 years. Hydraulics online. Flight controls responsive. He tested the cyclic, the collective, the pedals. Everything worked. He keyed the radio. "Ghost 1-1, ready for departure." The tower came back immediately. "Ghost 1-1, you are clear for takeoff. Welcome back, Captain." Marcus pulled collective, added throttle, and the Apache lifted off the ground. For the first time in 10 years he was flying. The machine responded to his touch like it remembered him, like it had been waiting. He climbed to 500 feet, banked left over the base, and felt the wind and the power and the clarity he'd been missing. Below him, 200 people watched in silence, many of them crying. He flew the demonstration pattern, smooth and precise, every maneuver perfect. He didn't showboat, he didn't need to, he just flew. And for 12 minutes, Marcus Dalton wasn't homeless. He wasn't broken, he wasn't forgotten, he was Ghost. When he landed, the entire hangar erupted. Soldiers were cheering, shouting his call sign, saluting. Marcus shut down the engines, removed the helmet, and climbed out of the cockpit. His legs were shaking. Admiral Cortland was the first to reach him. The old man pulled him into a hug, something admirals don't do, and whispered in his ear, "Welcome home, son." Captain Mitchell was next, followed by Sergeant Rivera, followed by dozens of others. They all wanted to shake his hand, to thank him, to tell him they remembered. Colonel Henderson was nowhere to be seen. Later, after the ceremony, after the photographs, after the speeches, the Admiral sat down with Marcus in a quiet office. "Captain, I'm going to be blunt. You need help. You need treatment. You need a place to live, and I'm going to make sure you get all of it." Marcus shook his head. "Sir, I appreciate it, but I've been through the system. It doesn't work for people like me." The Admiral leaned forward. "It will now. I am personally overseeing your case. Full benefits restored, full medical coverage at the VA, and I'm getting you an apartment on base while you go through treatment. You're not going back to that bridge. Do you understand me?" Marcus felt his throat tighten. "Sir, I don't know if I can do this again. I don't know if I can be that person anymore." The Admiral's voice was gentle but firm. "You don't have to be that person. You just have to be you. And that's enough." The offers came quickly after that. A position as a flight instructor, teaching advanced tactics to the next generation of pilots. A consulting role with a defense contractor, speaking engagements at military academies. Marcus turned them all down. He accepted the treatment, he accepted the apartment, He started therapy, real therapy, with a counselor who understood combat trauma. He started sleeping without nightmares. He started eating regular meals. He gained weight. He cut his hair. He shaved the beard. And slowly, over the course of months, he started to look like himself again. But he didn't go back to flying. He didn't take the instructor job. Instead, he did something else. He started volunteering with a veterans outreach program in Killeen. He went back to the I-35 bridge, back to the place where he'd lived for 4 years, and he found the men who were still there. Kevin, the young guy he'd protected, was still sleeping in the dirt. Marcus sat down next to him. "Hey, Kevin, you remember me?" Kevin looked up, squinting in the sunlight. "Yeah, man, you're the quiet guy. Where you been?" Marcus smiled. "I've been getting help, and I want to help you." He spent the next 6 months connecting homeless veterans with resources, navigating the VA system for them, using his story to open doors that had been closed. He became a counselor, a guide, a voice for the men and women who'd been forgotten the way he had. One evening, a year after the ceremony, Marcus stood on the I-35 bridge at sunset. The place didn't look different. The dirt was still there. The graffiti was still there. But he was different. He reached into his pocket and pulled out Danny's compass, the brass shining in the fading light. He rubbed his thumb over the surface, felt the worn engraving. He thought about his co-pilot, about the words he'd said before the missile hit. "We're good. We're good." And Marcus realized something. They were. Not perfect, not fixed, but good. He whispered to the wind, "We're good, Danny. We're finally good." He turned to leave and saw another veteran sitting against the concrete pillar, a woman in her 30s, eyes hollow, jacket too thin for the cold night coming. Marcus walked over and sat down next to her. She didn't look at him. He didn't push. He just sat there for a moment, letting the silence settle. Then he spoke, his voice calm, certain. "Let me tell you something. It's never too late to come back home." She turned to him and he saw the question in her eyes. He pulled out a card with the VA outreach number with his own number written on the back. "I'm Marcus. I used to live right here, under this bridge, for 4 years. I thought I was done. I thought I'd lost everything, but I was wrong. And if you want help, I'll make sure you get it. No bureaucracy, no runaround, just help. You interested?" She took the card, her hand shaking. Yeah, I am." Marcus smiled. He stood up, offered her his hand, and helped her to her feet. As they walked toward his car, toward the outreach center, toward the beginning of her road back, Marcus felt Danny's compass in his pocket. It still pointed north. It always had. He just hadn't been able to see it for a while, but now he could, and he'd spend the rest of his life making sure others could see it too. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that second chances are possible, that heroes can be found in the most unexpected places, please subscribe to our channel. And right now, on your screen, you'll see another incredible story waiting for you. Click it, watch it, and remember, every person you pass on the street has a story. Some of them might just be legendary. Thank you for watching.